You know, so after 20 minutes and a complete reformat of the SD card, I think we were finally ready to launch this ship.
I think it's ready to go.
Why don't we break a bottle of fucking Cristal over the bow?
Let's do it.
Going? Because my day today started at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Why
did it start so early?
Why?
I'm going to tell you why it started so early. Because my moron son decided he was going to go out last night, a Monday night, and then roll in at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Ugh.
And this is after this whole to-do about him begging us to go to skiing up at Wyndham.
Right.
With a couple of his friends. Like, one of their friends' parents owns a house up there. So he's taken this intersession class because he only managed to eke out 9 credits out of his first semester at college. And the class is 2 weeks long, and this is like the middle of it. So we're like, here's the deal. We're going to let you go up there, but you have to outline 2 of those chapters before you go of what you need to do. And if you get anything less than a C in the class, you're paying for it. He was all like, oh, I'm doing great. I have hundreds and everything in there. And I'm like, have you gotten any grades back yet? He's like, no. So I'm like, how do you know you have hundreds and everything? Right. But then when all of a sudden it was looking like he had some skin in the game, like he was going to have to cough up like $1,000 for the SUNY Farmingdale online class that any idiot could pass, without. He got all like cagey, like, well, I don't know, so I don't know. So,
That's
and
rough.
my wife, of course, like if it was me, it was just me, I would have went to bed. He gets home when he gets home, and I'll deal with it in the morning. My wife wakes up at 10 o'clock. Then she wakes up at midnight. Then she wakes up at 2. He's still not there. She's got my phone going because it's got to find my iPhone on it. She sees him sitting in his friend's house 2 blocks away. Right. It's not like they went anywhere.
Right.
But then she's like sitting in bed with the phone on, and I don't know. Neither one of us got any sleep. And, of course, she's completely entitled to be worried about it because he's not. What do you do at 2 o'clock in the morning? Nothing good happens at 2 o'clock.
Nothing good. We used to say nothing good happens after midnight, especially in a bar.
And then he catches a ride home with some kid who he's been hanging out with. And the assumption is this kid just sat there till 2 in the morning without drinking.
Right.
So, I mean, I remember, and this is a curse for me because, like, I know I don't think I told the truth to my parents about what I was doing from the age of 15 to the,
Dude, never. I used to fear all the time one day they would find out. And
so my wife is perfectly justified in being upset at these shenanigans. Yeah. And I don't know. So I didn't get any sleep either. And here we are.
Yeah, that's rough, man. I'm watching from afar, just sort of projecting myself and what I'm going to be dealing with. I'm just assuming I'm going to have these exact issues. But
sorry, somehow or else that works even after reformatting the card. Anyway,
maybe it's a different.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your.
Yeah, I was just saying it's fun to watch my future. I'm basically taking cues how I'm going to deal with this. But I was thinking back when he's in college, so he's just home on a break. I remember when I would come home for breaks for a couple of weeks. I'm trying to think back. I definitely partied, but my parents seemed to leave me alone completely. It was interesting, thinking back, because they were pretty helicoptery. But when I was in college, something like a switch flipped in my dad's head, and he's like, okay, he wants to fuck up his life.
That's kind of where I'm at. Yeah. I'm like, you don't learn by somebody always bailing you out and wiping your ass. You learn by falling down on your face and making mistakes.
Yep.
Of course, as a parent, it's much harder to watch your kids fall down and break their face because, especially nowadays, the stakes are higher, right? Kids do stupider shit. There's fentanyl and all the drugs.
Yep.
He could, part of my mind, and this is probably because I'm just surrounded by addiction all the time. This fucking
it's what
podcast
we do
and everything
for fun.
Is I'm thinking he's it's 2 a.m. He's not answering a text. He's OD'd on fentanyl and he's lying in his friend's basement. That's where that's where I go, which is ridiculous to go there all the time within your head.
But so long as I was thinking about that too, I'm doing that same thing with Noah. This morning, he carries a special lunch bag that's attached to his regular bag. that this morning my wife was like, "What is in here?" Right? She opens it up, and it was just candy, but not just like a kid's candy. Like he's stocking different types of candy, like a store.
Yeah, but isn't he like selling it at school?
Well, apparently he's taking it to the next level. And I said, I was talking to him this morning. My wife's like, talk to him. I'm like, all right. And I was like, where are you getting all this candy, man? He's like, oh, I get it from this guy. It's really good stuff. I said, no. Do you understand how this sounds? He goes, it's not drugs. I said, I know it's not drugs. I said, but boy, it certainly looks like you're being groomed to deal drugs in school. I'm like, you have a supplier. You have your customers.
Are there people that sell wholesale candy in fucking 7th grade?
He says there's some kid who like buys it in bulk, and he's like one of like the street corner kids with
Get
the
the
candy.
fuck
I swear to
outta here.
God. And apparently this is against the rules, but it's business.
So tell him what he has to do is he has to get a couple goons and beat the shit out of that guy and take over his territory, because he has to become the wholesaler. You make more money at wholesaling and you take less risk.
He's very savvy. I think he'll get there. I want him to find his own way to taking over the entire territory. But it's just funny, like the way that we project these things in our kids. But maybe if my parents were thinking more along those lines, who knows?
But ultimately, though, and here's the thing, I remember when I was 18, and I don't know why, because I don't remember a lot of other years of my life, but I remember when I was that age, and my parents could have told me anything. They could have tried to do anything. It wouldn't have made one bit of difference. Right. I would have just gone out and did what I was going to do. So my thinking is, and this came up because somebody in our Discord was having an issue that kind of is grounded in the same idea that you cannot control the way that other people do things. You can think that you can think that you can exert influence, but people are going to do what they want to do.
Yeah,
right?
No matter what.
Where does the suffering come from in you? The suffering in you comes from thinking that you can make somebody behave the way that you want them to, when really you have no control over what other people do. You can be a jerk.
Yeah, you can't change.
But you can't, and all you're doing is punishing yourself. That is my philosophy, because I don't know. I just think that lessons that are learned with a little bit of pain are the ones that stick with you.
I love that as a way to start the show.
Oh, right. We didn't start the show yet.
We're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Nat X.
I'm Sleepy Mike.
And boy, do we have a show for you today on RMA. It's Mike and Nat in the morning. Welcome to another exciting episode. And I'm sure you're all a little confused because we basically started the episode, but you were making such great points. I'm like, I don't want to interrupt this. This was good shit.
All this on 4 hours sleep.
Yeah. This is when we get the most philosophical, when I, don't sleep during the night and you're just kind of half tired, half asleep, half awake, and this is when all the stream of consciousness begins meandering around the bend.
Yeah, but there's typically no touchstone or place to stop. And maybe it's appropriate that, because when I don't get a lot of sleep, I feel like the same as I used to when I was hungover.
Yeah, it scares me.
So now we're going to be talking about this book, The Addicted Lawyer by Brian Cuban today,
yep.
And he was mostly hungover a lot.
All the time.
A lot of parallels with my own experience, but we'll get to that.
This episode is actually brought to you by the Recovery in the Middle Ages Patreon.
Oh, remember them?
What is Patreon? It's a members-only subscription service featuring Discord, private message, chat, and video. It's like having a recovery support family right at your fingertips. Go to patreon.com/recovery in the Middle Ages. I'm kind of doing a little schlocky, but we're actually having a ball on the Discord. There's a great discussion forum on there that's separate and apart from our private Facebook one.
People are suffering, though, also.
Yeah, people have trouble everywhere, but that's the point of this.
We can all suffer together.
Yeah, that's what this is. It's like when you go to church, you don't go because you're an angel. You go because you're a sinner. And
I wish more church-going people would remember that.
I as their deacon, I remind them regularly. But that's the same with recovery. Like when people come to recover with us, it's not about being perfect. We're not, none of us is perfect. And
not even close.
So it's great, though. We all recover together. So come on to the Discord.
Yeah, Discord is great, man. I've really been enjoying it. It was...
it's like $5 a month, I think, is the lowest one.
Is it 5?
I think
or is it 3?
It might be 3. I haven't looked at it in a long time.
It's cheap. For what you get, it's cheap.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
So that was great. So join that.
I'll send you a sticker.
We want great
Join
reviews.
the Patreon. I'll just send you a free sticker.
Yeah.
How about that?
Free stickers for all.
Not all. Not everybody. Not all 7,000 people that like the Facebook group. I don't have that many stickers.
Yeah. So where should they visit us, though?
I don't know. Did the website get fixed?
Yes, it is.
Then it's middleagesrecovery.com.
Yeah, .com. Drop us a review on Apple iTunes podcast. We will we'll read reviews on the air.
We'll review your reads.
That's
on
enough
the air
schlocky
also.
intro garbage.
We do too much schlocky.
I know.
Intro
We just
garbage.
didn't do any last time, so I'm like making up for it.
It's okay, man. I mean, this is what we do.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do first? There's so much to do.
We've got so much to get to. I think some of you heard last week who listened to the last show that Ryna, the great famous recovering Ryna. Ooh, that's
a recovering
Ryna.
No, he needs a shirt with a rhinoceros on it.
Yes, I love this.
The recovering Ryna.
And he's been just on fire. He joined the Discord and he's been like just spreading the word. He's doing great. And he's so excited about his recovery that he's called and left another message.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like he leaves a message and then usually a week goes by before we play it because he leaves it right before the show. So I think this came in last Thursday. So
nice.
Circumstances may have changed, and I think he's going to have to leave another corrective message after we post this one that goes into further detail. But I will confess that I have not listened to this yet.
I have not either. So we're all going to hear it together.
Here we go.
Probably a little dangerous, but
here we go. I hope it's not too loud.
What's up, Mike and Nats and RMA Nation? This is Ryan Johnston, Chicago, and just calling to check in, say, hey, how you doing? Honestly, I really have nothing to say, bro. If you don't play this, that's fine. I don't really care. I'm literally on break at work and bored. But I just want to call and say things are going good. I know I just called in the last show, but I just want to say, hey, how you doing? And I hope everyone's doing well. You know, I'm doing good. I'm going to Florida at the end of the month.
Oh, cool.
Something I wouldn't have been able to fucking do if I was using, you know. So it's like these little things are cool. Like people ask me to go out and shoot pool, and I was able to do that and say yes. Like, I swear to God, these are things that I wouldn't ever even consider doing. It would be a straight no for me. Sorry, because, you know, my life revolved around getting and using more drugs. So it's the little things that are starting to add up. I wouldn't say I'm in a great spot, but certainly better than I was. I love you all. Stay strong. Much love from the Midwest.
boom.
The Midwest. You know, after he left this, he sent me a DM asking if I could hear a Chicago accent in there, and I pretended that I listened to it, and I said, yeah, but it's not really that bad. But here he sounds like some kind of fucking
New
gangster
York,
from the South Side. I don't know.
Yeah, the Chicago was like Da Bears. That was like when the Chicago.
Right.
And he called in the RMA hotline. So if you want to call in and leave a message, it's 516-888-6297. It's about 3 minutes, but yeah, send us your stories, your updates. Tell us how you're doing. And yeah, man, when I first got free, especially Suboxone, he just started medically assisted treatment.
Yes.
Suboxone.
We like medically assisted treatment here.
And what he's noticing is once you start on one of those medications, you all of a sudden have all of this free time. Because you used to spend 12 hours, whatever it was, 24, just searching for drugs, doing drugs. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
So now he's discovered, like, okay, now I don't have this craving all the time. I'm not chasing this high all the time. I can do anything. I've got time. I've got energy. It's amazing. And so I'm glad he's sticking with it. And yeah. Thank you for checking in.
Yeah. Thanks for the Midwest accent. I had forgotten how prevalent it is in the Midwest.
Yes,
right?
the Midwest.
See, this is me not sleeping. I'm just fucking babbling. So are we moving on to emails or what are we doing?
This is a tell us your story or send us an email segment of the show. Send it to Mike R at middleagesrecovery.com. You could send us these emails or posts on Facebook, and we'd love to hear from you, and so does everybody else. So we got one.
Okay. Are we folding this into Monksters Speak, or is that a different thing?
Well, I have more for Monksters Speak, but then we won't be able to do much with the book. So
okay.
We'll save.
I just want to try something.
Okay.
It deleted all my...
Oh, okay.
I'm going to have to play the Monksters Speak jingle underneath this very spot here at 14 minutes and 59 seconds. Okay.
Monksters speak.
Here we go. Hi, Mike. I was listening to your... it's a guy, so let me do that again. Hi, Mike. I was listening to your latest podcast when you asked, is anyone really doing dry January? Yes, I am. Do I think it's because I need 1 month off? No way. I need all months off. However, I have to say, it makes it much easier socially to use the now popular dry January to kickstart one's sobriety. And no, it is not my only tool in the toolbox. I'm involved in multiple recovery groups and programs. I have no illusions that dry January is a facade, but it's one that is now in the popular zeitgeist. This now opens the door to people who may have been afraid of the social stigma surrounding alcoholism or alcohol use disorder.
Stigma.
In my humble opinion, it's just another door to welcome people into a health-centered lifestyle. Love your podcast. Keep at it. Love, Fred. No, he didn't say love, Fred, but Fred.
Fred, thank you so much. I love that. I'm glad that he commented on Dry January, too, because as Monksters Speak goes, we posted a Monksters Speak, or you did, in the Discord recovery group, and we got some answers to that, too.
I got another email, but I don't know if you want to do that or you want to just go right into
Well, this one is the Dry January, so let's read the Dry January responses before the next one, unless that's a Dry January.
Sort of. It's from Samantha at Soberlink.
Yeah.
Hi, team. Mind sending over November and December's impression info when you get a chance? The landing page received 20 visits in December, and 10 of those people filled out a form to learn more. Exciting stuff. Thanks.
Yes! Is that exciting? That's a 50% conversion rate.
That's pretty good, but did anybody actually buy anything is the question.
I don't know. Those are leads. They might even sell just the leads.
Samantha, we will send you that data forthwith.
Absolutely. And keep advertising with us. Come on the show. Let's do this together. Soberlink and RMA can go places.
Don't get all too excited about that.
Right. So we had some responses to the Dry January Monksters Speak on the Discord, and Mike asks, what is your experience with Dry January or Sober October or any other 30-day program you did? Challenges, wins? What did they do to keep their mind off of alcohol? Did you decide to continue after 30 days? Thanks, Kyle, for the question.
Did I write that? Yeah. Well, Kyle kind of wrote it. Kyle was our executive producer this week.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. So Liz, Queen Liz of Monkster Haven, says, only time I stopped drinking for any significant period was for 6 weeks while I was undergoing laser treatments for the fat accumulated around my waist. Well,
sorry, Liz, not funny, but funny. You know?
I couldn't wait to start drinking again, and that's just what I did. It was about 10 years ago. Wow, that's cool. I want to get something like that. I can get the fat off of my stomach.
I didn't realize that was possible.
I didn't either.
I have quite a bit of fat.
Tell us more, Liz. I'm looking for that hourglass figure.
Plus, you stopped drinking. Did they give you any pain medications? Inquiring minds want to know.
Do they?
Like, do you get oxys for lipo? I would imagine there'd be all these addicts with very slim physiques if that were the case.
I bet you they do in the really rich ones when they're just trying to give them more medication. Now, Chris Stop 057 wrote a really long one.
Oh, just out the guy.
Well, yeah, it's long.
Okay.
Shall I read the whole thing?
I don't know. Yeah, we got plenty of time.
All right, we'll just skip the life update.
No,
I don't have anything interesting.
Everything.
I never did a dry. This is for Chris on the Patreon. I never did a dry calendar month like Sober October or Dry January. However, when I quit drinking, I built up to it by reading Annie Grace's This Naked Mind and listening to her podcast. Yeah. She had just come out with the Alcohol Experiment, which had an online support feature with daily emails, reading, video, and journaling prompts. It was free back then, and I signed up just after quitting on my own. I did quit before, but this was different. The program was fantastic. It helped me refocus my intention from white-knuckling to learning about alcohol and human biology as it relates to alcohol, other addictive behaviors, and the brain chemistry behind craving, compulsion, and other behaviors. This guy would be a good journalist or good writer here. Just talking about Annie Grace, we haven't really discussed her lately.
We haven't.
So if we have new listeners who didn't hear those episodes, I highly recommend go back and listen to the This Naked Mind book review. I mean, that was
in a nutshell or nutsack.
In a nutsack.
In Uncle Jesse's nuts. You can Annie Grace's This Naked Mind, basically what it does is it pulls the veil back on some of the more commonly held assumptions and hardwiring that we've received about alcohol and its place in society and in your life over the years, and sort of unspools the threads and makes you take a look at what alcohol does to you versus what you think it's doing for you.
It pulls back the curtain on like the hypnosis that we're all under.
Yeah, from a social perspective and from you personally. So what it's trying to do ultimately is get you to a place where you recognize two things. One, alcohol doesn't do anything for you and is harmful to you in any amount. And two, sobriety is not a state of deprivation, but it's a state of abundance, and it's something that you should want to be in all the time rather than constantly thinking about where your next drink is coming from. Do you think I got that?
You got it. And the big takeaway for me was once you see that, you can't unsee it. Like once you internalize everything she's, talking about, and that's what Chris is talking about. You can't unknow that stuff, and it completely changes the way you think about alcohol.
Yes.
Moving on. As I approached the 30-day mark, I was somewhat terrified of being set adrift without the framework. I didn't know if I could moderate or if I wanted to. I decided to go another 45 days or so from that point and considered drinking on St. Patrick's Day. As it turned out, I chose not to and made another short-term goal. When I got 6 months, I had a drink on a family vacation and found it fairly unsatisfactory. But I knew I'd created something of a crossroads. A month later, I found myself wavering and went back and restarted the experiment. By the end of the second go, I was much more resolved to go forward on my own. It became much easier to make one decision than to debate it daily and weekly ad nauseam.
Absolutely, 100%.
Ends with some Latin. I love it.
That's why people should consider when they're flirting with the idea of moderation, that moderation, all that does is make your life a lot more complicated. And that you're if anything, you spend more time thinking about alcohol, not less.
Exactly.
And, the goal, actually, what Annie says the ultimate goal is to make alcohol a small and insignificant part of your life so that you're not obsessed with it one way or the other, right? Yeah. And that's what he's talking about there, really. It's that moderation is pointless. Ultimately.
It's moderation is
harder.
Pain.
Yes.
We've got one more from the Wizened one.
Okay.
I feel like we have to read this because this is from Alan on the Discord. It's a short one. Ish.
Alan's words of wisdoms are always welcome.
It's a whiz bomb, as usual. This is from Alan. Dry months weren't a thing when I was drinking, but I did have a bet with a friend who could go the longest without drinking. What I remember is we both cheated. It's sort of like the Seinfeld with masturbating.
Yeah.
I probably lasted a week with the help of weed, two in all, and whatever else I could get my hands on. I've never seen that spelled out before. I did kind of have a sober January when I first got sober. I was in a treatment 7 weeks, and they discharged me New Year's Day, and I went back into the halfway house for, I think, 6 months. It was a long time ago, and I'm getting old. Memory. It helped being off the street for all the holidays in the beginning. It wasn't entirely sure this sobriety thing was going to work, but with the gift of perspective, I can look back at those early days and see that I was done. So, sober January. Yeah, sure. I cannot drink in January or June or December. Now I'm going to go enjoy my straight-up black, no-sugar coffee, Neo-Neanderthal that I am. Hope you all have a great Friday. Thank you. I'm going to do the same. Yeah. Great points.
It's funny, I've been talking to some people lately who've been doing dry January, I guess folks who are just your average drinkers, and by that I mean like they drink a fair amount, but have decided for whatever reason to take a month off. And the questions I'm getting are really interesting. It's like, my wife and I have no idea what to do tonight, like without going out and
what
drinking
do we do?
somewhere. Like, what do we do, So I'm like, I don't know, try axe throwing, like, I don't know what to tell me, because it's like, and then like, I saw all these articles for whatever reason. Dry January seems to be like really in the zeitgeist, as the other person said this year, because there's all these articles that have been coming out like what should me and my spouse do? We have nothing to do, and everybody usually quits on Dry January on this day, and it's January 6th or the first Friday after they say they're going to do dry Januaries when people fall off.
Oh, okay.
Because they realize that, they get to the Friday and they're like, well, my whole social life is revolved around going out to bars and drinking. And it's almost like people can't like conceive of the fact that there's something else to do. And I think some of it is like people are looking to recreate the bar experience without alcohol. And that's like, and nobody wants to do that.
Because a bar without alcohol is a bore.
Right. Oh, wow.
Do you see that? See what I did?
There's a bumper sticker or a T-shirt.
It's marketing just flows out of me. Catchphrases.
It's amazing.
Branding.
But I think that's kind of it. Like, because like you get it into your head, you wear this deep groove in your thinking that Friday nights are for sitting your ass down on a bar stool, drinking, and relaxing. And I put up my little air quotes, relaxing, because nothing relaxing about it the next day.
Nope.
Rather than thinking, I could spend Friday night, binge watching Yellowstone, which is what I've been doing. Or I could go to the gym. I could.
There's a million things you can do, and not only that, there's a lot of things you were already doing that can still be fun without alcohol. Going to see a band play, or But that's why I think AA can be so comforting early on, because it gives you an instant social group of people that are they have stuff going on. You can go out, you can hang out, you can have fun, and there's no pressure to drink. So that's another reason to join a recovery community in person.
Sober parties.
Yeah, sober parties, and then you retrain yourself to have fun, without a drink. And now I find that I'm more hilarious, more entertaining without it.
It's so weird because I didn't really know you before. I mean, I did. We went out to that show, but you seemed like you were you were keeping a lot of stuff internal.
Yes. Well, I was subduing my inner, and plus at that time I was secretly drinking because I was already. I think I might have been on probation still. I think I was still in the system.
Okay.
So the drinking I was doing, I was keeping extremely under wraps.
I mean, after the first one, which you were a little cagey about, it was like we were hitting the bar every 20 minutes.
You can tell
15 minutes.
Yeah, that's funny.
I'm just glad I didn't do drugs with you, or else we would be doing a very different kind of podcast, probably from prison.
I wouldn't have chanced that. I didn't think for half a second that you would do drugs with me. If I did, it would have been a bad night. Yeah.
I don't know. I always used to think that. When I would meet some new person, you could always kind of suss out within the first few minutes whether they were that kind of person or not.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I totally ruined this one guy. He was God. I hate telling the story, but
Here it comes.
He had just got. I was living in the Bronx. It was the late '80s, and this guy had just gotten out of prison, where he was for 6 months he had a really bad cocaine problem, and he had stolen some stuff, and it wasn't the first time he'd been picked up, so they made him do a stretch. And he came out and he came to visit. He was a friend of a friend that I knew in the Bronx at college. So he comes up, and I sit down and I start talking to this guy, and all of a sudden I realize that we have the same extracurricular interest in the same kind of drugs. And within a half an hour, he and I skipped out of the party, and we're up in the streets scoring. And then fast forward 6 months later or a year later, he had gotten an apartment, but the last time I saw him, I went into his apartment. He had sold all his furniture and was sitting there with just a lit candle and a stem in the middle of a room.
Oh my God.
And since then, he's been basically in prison ever since, to this day. So I feel really bad about that. But I mean, I shouldn't, because I know he would have found his way to that anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
but I felt like I was the impetus that.
If you were the opposite, if you were sober, do you think you could have saved that guy? Do you think that there's any way you could have given him some hope or a way out?
Some people just are born with I don't know,
a plastic spork in their mouth.
I tend not to really think of biological determinism in that way, but this guy, from the time he was 13, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I try not to think that way. There's kids in our kids' grades who I've already,
assigned to.
I'm that kid's going to jail. But that's not fair. And
it's not.
When I had my store in town, all those kids would come in and out of my shop. And I like to be that shop owner who's friendly with the kids and, hey, Mr. Kingsley, and, how was your day, kids? So I got to eyeball a lot of these kids' behaviors, and I tried to really, when it was a kid that I had heard was bad, and you would know who I'm talking about, there's a couple.
I know who you're talking about.
And I really tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. When they came to my store, I tried to be like give them a fresh start. And I regretted it every time because they would steal things. And,
Well, it's funny because that kid, I ran into him not too long ago, and he seemed like he was really sort of leveled out.
It's possible.
I think he
Noah
got
says
proper medication, and now he's like,
well,
he's okay. Because he had a rough home life.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we're praying for him.
Yeah.
I know.
I got one more.
Yes.
Okay. It was an email that came in from MP. I'll just say her name is MP.
Okay.
And I like this one because it's someone that's not quite made the full commitment to a sober lifestyle yet, but is still sort of dipping the toe in, as it were.
Yes.
MP says, "Hi, Mike. I've been listening to you guys for over a year, and I love it. I've been dabbling in sobriety for a few years now, and your podcast really helps me through the ups and downs and inspires me to continue striving towards my ultimate goal of sobriety." So it is an ultimate goal, which is great. I think one of the reasons I can relate to you guys so much is that I, too, grew up in the New York area in the 80s. Summer in the Hamptons, big yawn, but a shit ton of fun. And winters in NYC. I went to a boarding school. I'm going to leave the name out. And then Hampshire College, and spent many summers touring with the Dead. Your mention of certain nightclubs in New York City instantly brought back crazy memories, and I wouldn't doubt if our paths crossed at some point in the late 80s, early 90s. I have very little memory of the late 80s, early 90s, so it's entirely possible. I currently live in Vermont in the middle of fucking nowhere and love it. I've been here for 30 years, and I don't miss my past life in the slightest. Anyway, I'm doing Dry January with the help of Annie Grace's alcohol experiment, and we'll see what happens from there. I hope you guys continue your podcast, as I know it gives me and many others something to look forward to in our quest to leave alcohol in the rearview mirror. Cheers, MP.
Hey, MP. I thought you were saying NP. And I didn't know who that was. But now I think
now
I
you
do.
know who it is?
Yes.
So that's nice. I mean, any kind of push that we can, any kind of help that we can give people.
Yes. And sometimes, Mike, push comes to shove. And when it does, you'll regret it.
I already regret it.
That didn't make any sense.
I don't know what the fuck you're talking. I never know what the fuck you're talking about.
Thank you, everybody, for writing in. I love doing shows where people are participating. As you know, it's always been my dream to have like a radio show, a morning zoo type of thing, or yeah. And I wish we could have like call-ins, and so this is.
We could. I mean, the phone is hooked up to the machine. We could just give people a time and tell them to call in.
That's not a bad idea.
Why don't we just do that?
You want to do that?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
The Australians are almost in bed.
But
maybe they'll call.
What happens? You do it, and then nobody calls. Isn't that like the most embarrassing, demoralizing moment in a show?
Pretend it's not even a segment. You just slip over it and go on to the next thing. Yeah.
All right, maybe that's coming soon.
Does anybody out there want us to do call-ins? Does anybody want to call in? Because it's hard enough for me to get people to call the hotline and talk when they're they're not talking to a person. Yeah. No, I want people to call in. Maybe when we go switch to video. We're doing our streaming show. We're going to switch to a daily streaming morning show. Didn't Dave try that on Dopey and it just sort of petered out? Not exactly. He didn't do it the way I wanted him to. He had a different idea. I said, I think you should do it this way. He said, I can. I said, okay, we'll see if it works. So you've been doing the Sober Together app? Yeah, I've been enjoying the Sober Together app. Not a sponsor, but we're actually getting a lot out of this. And as I start building the RMA recovery program in my mind, because that's what I'm doing, I'm trying to put this all together because I feel like we're really growing an interesting ecosystem of recovery and support, and all of these little pieces are coming. Think of it more like a petri dish. Yeah, I love it, and it's starting to crystallize. And and so one of the things I really like about the new, like where I'm going with the RMA recovery program, is the Sober Together is like the perfect way to get the sharing and reaching out and personal touch of like a meeting, but it's on your phone, and it's a lot easier if you have social anxiety like myself, or don't want to aren't comfortable in front of a real person. So I've been enjoying it. So let me get this straight: you want to steal Dan's idea? I mean, we would probably white label his app or something, or no, we were just working together, but like. Something like that. I enjoy it. It's I don't know. I don't do it exactly the way they want you to. You don't answer the question of the day, I noticed. Yeah, because I'm too busy. I'm like, as soon as I see it, I hit the button, I do a quick thing, and then I'm back to it. Like last night, I was like, shit, I forgot to do my check-in. So I was in the middle of 10 things out here. I ran into my bedroom. I did it. And a minute into it, my wife's like,
Dad. I'm like, what? I'm doing my fucking thing. So it's very hard for me to get like time where I can focus on it, but I do it. It's like something that keeps me grounded, and I love to see everybody else's.
So I watch all your check-ins, and
Oh, you do?
oh yeah, and like I should have watched them back to back because they're all like this. Hi, it's Nat. I've been really busy today. I'm pulling my hair out. Everything's crazy. Okay, talk to you tomorrow. Like every day, it's like this. You can just post the same one.
Oh, I barely get it in. I'm like, so sorry about that. But
no, they're good. And
I think people
appreciate you tagging me in every single one of your check-ins because then I feel obligated to watch it to get the little one out of my inbox.
Well, yours are great. You know, I watched a few of yours, and I'm like, I'm feeling, insecure about my shares because I'm like, holy shit, this guy's actually putting good stuff out there. You're thinking, you're making comments about, what you're feeling and how you're doing.
You know what I do? I do it first thing in the morning when I wake up, which is like 5 a.m.
Yep.
Nobody's around except the dog. And the dog sits in my lap, and we do the fucking thing.
I like that. See, I've done it a couple times with my kids in the den, and I'm standing in
I can't do that.
I think I showed Max in one of them. I'm like, Max is like, Daddy. Like, can't I get any time? But it works for me, and I think, it's great. And we're on there. It's not a huge community yet, so it's pretty intimate. And there is a guy with an Australian accent.
Yeah,
Aaron. So if you like to hear
Aaron's
that,
fucking awesome.
He's such a glowing recovery, it feels good to watch this guy share.
He's if you want to know what he's doing this week, he's camping with his son.
I love it.
Yeah, it's great. He's giving like little updates from the tent.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. I
get him on the show.
I do. I was thinking about that. Like, there are some people on that app that are really interesting.
Yeah.
I would love, and I know we usually don't do like people to come on and tell their story, but maybe we could do that every once in a while. It might be a good thing.
The show is a living thing. Like the English language, it changes, it grows with usage and how people need it. So
yeah,
I think that would be cool.
Yeah. All right. So
Buttons.
Anything else going on in your life that you want to talk about before we drift into the lawyers and fucking shit?
Yeah, I took a no, I don't. There's nothing.
Really?
I took Noah to Micro Center.
I love that story.
So if you guys out there, what is Micro Center? How do you describe Micro Center to someone who doesn't know what it is? It's like what?
It's like a CompUSA store from like the 90s when you could go to a big box store and buy like computers and stuff. It's like almost like that, or like a melded with a Circuit City, because they have like, all the stuff you can build a computer. Mm-hmm. They have like printers, they have monitors, they have 3D printers.
It's like Valhalla for nerds and computer guys. There's audio stuff there.
There is, yeah. There's like creator content, like production stuff. It's really, you can drop a lot of money in that place.
It's
really
amazing. Quick. And so my son, if you guys have listened to the show, he's not like a straight ahead, like sports kid type of thing. He's more like me and Mike. He's into like technology, music, arts, 3D printing, all of that stuff. Audio. He does his own little streaming show and stuff. And this is like taking him there. It was like bringing him to Mecca. You know? He's like, can I go to Micro Center? He heard about it or something. It was a rumor. I was like, okay, we can go. And so we went there, and I got some funny pictures of him with like just a wall of different 3D printer filament, you know. And they have this, he's going to build a computer that his next computer will build. And it's just a really cool shop. It's fun to walk around with him. And we've been really bonding lately, Noah and I. He's taking these drum lessons, which I've always wanted to really learn drums, like from a real teacher. Yeah. So I'm watching Noah. I come into the lesson, and I sit there too, and I sort of play along with air drums. And this teacher, he's awesome, this drum professor. He's just like a cool, like old jazz guy. He's in his 60s. He's not that old, but he's very cool, and he's good with Noah. And Noah's getting good at the drums.
That's great.
And we started jamming a little bit because I got him one of these electronic drum sets. Mm-hmm. And like he's starting a band with the neighbor Maddie. Nice. She came over, set up her guitar, and they were like writing a song. So
cool.
It's really cool to see him do this. And Max has been really great. We had a super busy weekend, man. It was like the Pinewood Derby. That's what I wanted to bring up.
Yes, Pinewood Derby.
And this is it. If we talk about nothing else, the Pinewood Derby. If it's a Cub Scout thing, I think they do it globally.
Oh, yeah.
You carve up a car and paint it, and then
you start with a block of wood, and then you turn it into a car.
Into magic.
Yeah.
And so that was all day, 9 to 12. His car did horribly. which was really depressing, And I remembered that's exactly how it went for me. And my wife's like, "Don't tell him that's what." And my dad said the same thing. He goes, "Well, tell him that's what happens to us on our side of the family. We don't ever win Pinewood Derbies, And then my wife's like, "Don't tell him that." But I'm just trying to commiserate. But still, he had a good time, I think. And then a basketball game at 3, and then Micro Center with Noah, and it was
it's a busy day. I'm out of the Pinewood Derby finally.
Do you miss it?
Yes and no. I mean, I did it through 2 kids through Cub Scouts, so it was like I have like 10 of those cars, like 10 years
and
worth of cars.
And you have all this stuff. Like I was texting you about something with the car, and you're like, "Listen, I got all kinds of shit." I'm like, I got everything.
One thing I didn't have was the saw because I broke my bandsaw. Like
we should have gone over because that wedge that they give you, because we didn't cut it ourselves because we suck.
Right.
It sucks. We put the weight on it.
It's hard to balance it out.
So
Ben won the whole thing once.
What?
Yeah, he won the pack thing once, and then
that's awesome.
We both lost interest after that because we're like,
once you win,
who
cares?
I mean, who cares? At that point, you should just go for design. But this is wonky Boy Scout shit. So
right, like it was like Mike Tyson in his prime. That was like you. You're like, why am I even fighting? What's the point?
For money, but you don't get any money for winning the Pinewood Derby.
Yeah,
just stale munchkins.
Besides that, there was one thing that came up between my wife and I that I am not going to share on the show, but I started to use the Discord a little bit more, because I'm starting to build my own recovery support with all of the awesome Monksters, and I'm starting to really utilize it. And we have a relationship section.
Yes.
And every time I have an issue with my relationship, I'm like, should I post something? I'm like, I really need support here. I want to hear other people's opinions, but I'm like, maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah.
Any case, I did. And I got some very good support and advice, and I really appreciate it. So got to get on the Discord to hear about it. But
if you want to read about Nat's relationship problems, it'll cost you $3 a month.
Yeah, no, but the point was getting that support. Sometimes it's not like there's a solution. No one's going to give you the answer. It's just a person listening.
Right.
And so that was really great. What about you?
Acceptance is always a solution.
Yes, that's true.
But not to be, don't get walked on, but accept. I'm not big on acceptance, man. I'm big on I'm big on accepting the things that I cannot change.
And changing the things you can?
Yeah, less with that one.
And do you have the wisdom to know the difference?
Well, that's where the problem is, right? Trying to suss out which things are within your control and which things are not. And sometimes that is not clear. And sometimes the things that you're expecting from other people are not the things that they want to give you at the time. And you have to be okay with that. And you have to realize that maybe that's one of the things that you can't change.
Right.
And I'm speaking in real generalities, but that's a lesson that over the last year or so, I'm really trying to internalize, because I was very into the idea that my way of thinking was the correct way of thinking, and that if people were not thinking like me, then they were not, doing the correct thing. And that I realized that's just egotism on my part, or egoism.
Right.
And that I need to let go of that, because people have very different ways of looking at life. They come from different backgrounds.
Right.
They have different life experience, and it's not my life experience. And maybe my life experience is really fucking weird, because I'm reading the book, The Addicted Lawyer, and I'm like, well, that guy basically lived my life.
Yeah.
Or vice versa, and I'm like, nope. Like my wife, the people I deal with at work, none of them come from a background like that.
Right.
They're like normal people.
They don't know. They don't know what you've been through.
So if anything, the way that I think about everything is the exact opposite of the way things should be done.
Yeah.
So I don't know, who the fuck am I to be thinking that people should be behaving the way I want them to think. And it's given me so much inner peace lately.
Right.
My wife was like, "What's wrong with you?
Why are you so
give her a
peaceful?"
Big hug and kiss now," and I'm all and I think she thinks I'm I try to
Are
hide
you
something.
high?
Yeah. But I don't know, man. I needed to share that, because I've been feeling, and some of that I think is from the Sober Together app, because I'm talking through stuff that I never, not going to AA meetings and just talking to you is great, but this little question of the day, this little back and forth with other people, it's really having to sit down and talk about what's going on in your mind is really worthwhile. And I know I'm preaching to a bunch of people that have been vomiting this shit out in AA meetings for years, but to me,
this was new for you. I mean, never had that experience.
Even when I was in AA, the meetings I was in the 90s were not really conducive to that level, So this one removal from like face-to-face contact, even though it's just sort of like video-to-video contact,
it's perfect.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It really is. And all kudos to Dan and I don't know Dan's last name, but
M, I think.
Dan M for and whoever else helped create that app. Because anyway, I digress. But
yes, you digest.
I digress. We haven't done a hell of a lot over the last week. We were just trying to get our shit back from Christmas, and
it's happening though. I feel like we're getting into a rhythm. The shows are getting better. We're in season 3.
I meant me personally,
and you personally,
and my family.
It's reflected in the show.
So I went out to Target Rock on Sunday. Do you know where that is?
No.
So do you know where Comset is?
Yes.
So if you keep driving on the road past Comset, there is a little federal wildlife area called Target Rock.
Cool.
And Erin and I went, no kids. And, I'm always like after her to like go out and walk around, usually as an excuse for me to lug my camera around and take pictures, which I'm sure she finds incredibly boring. But we went out there and we had a nice walk in the woods, and I found a seal. I took a picture of a seal and some birds and stuff. And it was really a nice mental recharge, And what I realized is like, I don't need 4 hours of hiking through the woods, which is what I think I need.
Right.
What I really need is just like an hour or half an hour of walking in the woods and sort of forest bathing, as they call it.
Yeah,
in Japan.
I could use that.
You just get a little of the, there's a word for it, like shinrikyo or something, but it's like you basically ground yourself in the earth and you bathe in the forest. And we heard some owls hooting, and it was really something.
That's all. Now I got to do that. I got some of that last thing I'll talk about before we talk about the book, but we went to the planetarium.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted
place
to talk about. So that was my forest bathing, if you can call it that. On Long Island, there is a Vanderbilt Planetarium and Natural History Museum, which is very much not known. A lot of people don't even know that it's there.
I know.
And they just got a new planet. And by the way, a planetarium is the machine, not the dome. That's it.
Okay.
That's a little bit of trivia.
That's
I didn't know that they pointed out. They think they're so smart.
And it's in Cornelius Vanderbilt's old Gold Coast, Long Island mansion.
And they've turned it into a museum. And there's he's got a mummy from Egypt with like the bill of sale. And it was like,
you should probably give that back.
Yeah. We were questioning the guy there that was talking about it, and he got all cagey. He was weird. We're like, is this legal? And they have like a giant whale shark, and just like Museum of Natural History, they got a whole,
it's full of endangered animals.
Oh, stuffed, completely stuffed too, for your enjoyment. But the planetarium was so important to me growing up. This particular planetarium, like my parents would take me there, and I just loved it. I loved science. I loved learning. I loved the universe, and this was everything to me, just to be in that. And so for me, my son Max is a lot like I was in that way. And I'm like, he didn't think he wanted to go to I'm like, trust me, you want to do this.
Right.
You're going to love it. And it was awesome. We had such a great time. And it was my parents and both of my kids. And, they've been getting along great. But yeah, that was great. And that was for me, like, because you get to walk around outside, you walk the grounds. And it just took me back to who I feel like I really am, this like curious person. And, I love to do that stuff. So trying to get back to that stuff, like going into the forest, doing your hobbies, it's huge. It's so hard to make time, but
you have to make the time
because
you are worth, the effort of making the time for.
You're worth it, Monksters.
Yeah.
Make time. Do the things you love.
Yeah, those museums are funny though, like that were created way back when. We went up to Boston for a couple of days over the break and went to the Harvard Natural History Museum, which is in this old building on the Harvard campus, and inside is all the every animal you could imagine that has been killed and stuffed by like Teddy Roosevelt or whoever else wandered through South America, and just put these things in a case.
Yeah.
But
elephant feet was in Vanderbilt's.
He
had spittoons made out of elephant's feet,
How times have changed,
Yeah.
Oh, now Liz is going to be mad because I went up to Boston and I didn't call her, but I was only up for a day and a half, so.
Sorry, Liz.
Yeah.
Next time, we got to do a Monkster meetup. I'm planning a retreat in my head for next year.
Yeah.
I'm putting it off a bit.
We should do it. I mean, there's some people are getting together in Florida soon.
Yeah, the Monksters have been doing meetups, which is really cool. And so at some point, we'll do a retreat where we can nature bathe or whatever. What is it? Forest bathing.
Forest bathing.
Yeah, drum circles, the works.
Yeah.
And
why don't we take a short break and be right?
We'll be right back after these words.
And we're back.
And we're back.
Apparently on a wholly other file on the machine. I don't know what the fuck. Whatever. Mm-hmm. It just makes life complicated. Anyway, so what are we doing today?
So today we're going to talk about, after last week's Nothing Burger, we thought, man, we better do something, because on this show, we really like to dig into books and ideas and things like that. And this was a book I think we had both been interested in. I had read it earlier, and I think I had mentioned it to you. Hey, you got to read this. This is about you,
Yeah.
It's called The Addicted Lawyer, and it's written by Brian Cuban, who is Mark Cuban, the famous, I guess he's a billionaire, owner of the Mavericks, and he's pretty public for a number of reasons. And so this is his older or younger brother. I don't remember.
Younger brother. He's the middle brother of three.
And he has an addiction story, and he talks about how lawyers are more addicted than others and that sort of thing. So that's the book we are doing today.
Yeah, an interesting book. A lot of it resonated with me, and I'll explain some of that in a few minutes. But just to sort of set the stage, I mean, Brian Cuban wrote this book in 2017. He'd been sober like 10 years or something like that when he wrote the book. He is still a successful lawyer. He's an author. He actually wrote a book, a fictional story that seems loosely based on his own life that came out a couple of years ago. He basically just talks about his own journey through addiction and recovery. He offers some insights into how he navigated his way through his legal career while still being addicted to cocaine and stuff. He discusses the unique pressures and challenges faced by people who are in the legal profession, and he gives some strategies for managing stress and for finding help. In some sense, the book was written for the general public. I guess there's some prurient interest in him because he's the brother of a billionaire. Mm-hmm. But so his story is certainly interesting. But I think the larger reason that he wrote this book was to sort of get to destigmatize addiction within the legal profession generally and within law schools, and sort of make a plea to people in the professional community to not hold drug and alcohol abuse issues against practitioners and against law students, which is huge. Because there is a big stigma in that community.
Yeah.
He starts the book off with his early years as a law student when he started struggling with addiction and mental health issues, although his issues really go back further into his childhood. He was always, he had struggled with his weight. He was always very heavy as a kid. He got picked on a lot.
Yeah.
And he started using drugs and alcohol to fit in amongst his peers in high school.
Yeah, he lists a cavalcade of things that he was reporting he was like addicted to at the beginning of the book. I thought it was interesting, and it kind of paints the picture of the issues he was having. He struggles with alcohol, crack, cocaine, and steroids, and eating disorder, and so you get this picture of the way he describes himself is an overweight child who was being fat shamed by his family, friends, mm-hmm. and how he felt. And so this addictive personality that, I guess was a soothing reaction to the how he felt inside, and it sort of develops from there.
What's interesting to me is that he really describes himself as probably the least suited person to become a lawyer.
Right.
One part of the book, he talks about how he took the Myers-Briggs personality test and how he came back as there's like a different kind of axis, and you're like four things in that test, and he came back as introverted, non-confrontational, basically the antithesis of what you would want to be as a, well, I don't like alpha, beta. I really dislike that categorization. He's not a type A, right? And he really never liked the idea of going to court with like terrify him.
Yeah.
Because he hates confrontation, and he also really is empathetic to like his clients, and
he becomes a lawyer to sort of live up to these standards that he feels like has been placed on him. Like he's not successful, he feels like he won't be looked upon favorably by his family and friends if he's not this. And he goes, being a lawyer, that's it. That was his ticket.
Well, and I think he, like so many of us that went to law school, he just sort of fell into it because he didn't know what else to do.
Right. Seems like a great job.
He didn't have any particular drive. He didn't want to be a lawyer ever since he was a little kid. And that was kind of how I got into it too. I mean, I just sort of fell into it because my wife decided that after years of being a paralegal, she wanted to go to law school, and she went. And then I was like, well, I can't just not be a lawyer if my wife's a lawyer. I may as well just go to law school because, I'm finishing up my college degree finally. I took the LSAT. I got a decent grade, and I just sort of went with it. And it's not like I had any burning desire to be a lawyer.
That's my mother's exact story. My father became a lawyer, and she was a teacher. And he said something. She goes, maybe I'll be a lawyer. And he goes, you're not going to be a lawyer. You're, like a woman. Like, what are you, nuts? And she goes, oh, yeah. And she graduated law school pregnant with me. But it was that same kind of competitive. And she's got the same opinion about law. Like, she doesn't love it. She just kind of did it.
Yeah. And that's the case with Brian Cuban. I mean, he was at the same time trying to manage what was really a huge cocaine addiction.
Right.
And his story is really parallel to mine in a lot of ways. Like, I was also fat shamed. I was a fat kid. I didn't have a lot of friends. I started getting into drugs and alcohol to make friends and to be more social. And in my case, it worked. I got plenty of friends, who would hang out and do drugs and alcohol with me and drink with me. So I stopped doing I had a year, a couple years of crack running, like in the late 80s, early 90s. And then I stopped that, and I had a couple years sobriety. And then that's when I sort of decided to go to law school. I had been had my shit together, and I went. He was getting worse and worse. And then he went to law school, and he did, partied all through law school. But the wheels really started coming off the bus when he graduated from University of Pittsburgh Law School, hopped on a bus with $500 in his pocket and moved down to Dallas because that's where his brothers were living at the time.
He went to be around Mark, who was
who was successful and gregarious and everything. And he ended up working for Mark's company, but only packing computers into boxes and shipping them out. He didn't have. It took him 3 times to pass the Texas bar. Because all he would do, he was working these shitty jobs. Like his first job down there was working for the city of Dallas, buying easements for the city that they could run their sewage pipes through or whatever. And I'm like, well, when I got out of law school, I took a job for the city of New York, in their tort division. And the work was a little more litigation, and I realized that I didn't love litigation from the beginning, but I felt like I was stuck on that path. So I started drinking like a fish when I got out of law school, and in law school. But then the blow started up again a little bit because I was kind of
makes things interesting. I don't know. Sometimes if you're in that, you're you got to change something about your brain, change something about yourself.
Yeah, because
deal with how you're feeling.
It was the legal profession is alternatively boring and terrifying, right?
Right.
I sit in a room and I can depose somebody for 3 hours, and I was good at my job. I guess I was very high functioning. But I didn't necessarily like it. And then I'd have to go into court. And when I went into court, I was terrified of being in court because I'm fresh out of law school and I'm arguing motions against guys that have been out of school for 20 years. And they can smell the blood in the water. And it's not a position that I really love to be in.
They see you coming a mile away.
But I started realizing that I liked going to court with a hangover because I wouldn't be as anxious. I would have normal anxiety from hangovers.
Right.
But at the same time, I could argue emotion and I wouldn't, it would be almost like I was out of my own head. Huh. You know what I mean?
So it gave you a little bit of distance.
My consciousness was altered a little bit. Huh. But, so I'm going to play a quick excerpt from the book that's a little germane to this situation. So here we go.
Being high functioning was a blessing and a curse. In my mind, I needed no help. I showed up to court sober. I did cocaine only in the bathroom of the firm or on my office desk with the door closed when I had no appointments. It provided just the pickup I needed sometimes, and it all made perfect sense to me. I viewed my law firm bathroom/coke breaks as almost a performance enhancer that would allow me to do my job better.
I can relate.
Yeah, I know. For the record, I never did cocaine while I was working, but afterwards was a different story. But I haven't done coke in like 20 years now, and but that kind of like ended it when 9/11 happened.
Yeah,
and
because you couldn't get your guy on the phone.
No, it wasn't that. I just
changed your perspective.
I just changed my perspective. My drinking accelerated quite a bit after 9/11. Right. But anyway, he gets out of law school. He does this work for the city of Dallas. Then he goes on to work for a couple insurance companies. And the one insurance company he worked for was like TransUnion or something, where he would fly around the country, mediate cases. That's the job I have right now.
Was that the adjuster job? Is that what that is?
He had two adjuster jobs. Yeah. One he worked for was like mostly low-level soft tissue auto accidents. And then he went to work for the one that was much larger cases that were in litigation.
So it's just what you're doing.
It's what I do now. I just... he did that, and then he went into litigation after that. I did litigation, and then I went into that. So it's like the mirror image, career-wise.
Wow.
It is a blessing and a curse to be high-functioning, because you can, if you're doing a really good job, and I've done a great job in my career. I've gotten promoted. I do very well. The urgency to stop is not there.
Right, because things haven't, and that's one of the reasons they tell you need a rock bottom, because they say this all the time when you're trying to help someone, but they're like, things are going too well for them. They don't have that reason. It's very hard to tell somebody who seemingly their job is going well, nothing has hit the fan necessarily.
Right.
So why should they change? And it's very hard. But as those things start to go downhill, I'll speak for myself. I would begin, convincing it wasn't that bad, or making until it was so bad there was no way I could, I'd be in handcuffs. So it's hard to get somebody high functioning to take a look at what they're doing.
It is, and it's one of the reasons why I have a really hard time accepting like an AA paradigm of addiction, because my experience is not it's a continual slide into the basement of bottoms. My experience was there were times when I was very bad, and then there were times that I could reel it in and I could function for years as a high-functioning person that drank way too much alcohol. Right? But it wasn't like a straight line from left to right going down. You know what I mean? Like I said, I haven't done cocaine in 20 years. And then I realized when my son was born that the amount of drinking that I was doing, I could not continue that. So what I did was I basically self-medicated myself to a place where I could get by with only drinking a certain amount at certain times.
Talk about torture. Jesus.
Yeah, it was. It was torture. It was constantly in my head trying to figure out like during a weekday when I had, I'm home with the kids, it's never more than X. And I was able to hang on to that because I knew the weekend would come eventually, and the weekend I would have more time so I could drink more.
Wow.
And, and eventually you just get fucking sick of that.
Yeah, it's like your whole life is revolving around high. And I was there too, believe me. It was meeting dealers and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's such a nightmare. So he's starting to see that in his life.
My dealer was every corner liquor store or bar, right? I mean, there's plenty of dealers of alcohol around. They're all over the place.
Everywhere. Chuck E. Cheese. I say this all the time. You can go to Chuck E. Cheese's with your kids and they've got a tap behind the counter. It's unbelievable.
Mark Cuban, though, got to the point where things started going
Brian.
really... Oh, yeah. Sorry. I don't want to get sued. He started getting to the place where he wasn't able to cover it up anymore. He was doing so much cocaine.
Yeah, just like me. I feel like, and I have the same kind of story as well. Like,
yeah.
I was, good until it wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, cocaine will ruin you, man. Like, and I remember, I've told the story in the podcast before. Like, I was a freshly minted lawyer at the city. I had my little city badge as a city attorney, and I was in my suit in a bar in Brooklyn trying to score coke, and at this bar called Cokies, and the cops, TNT comes in and pulls me out. I'm the only one sitting in there at like 4:30 on a Tuesday. Yeah. Pulls me out. I had just gotten the number because they're like, no, we don't sell out behind the bar anymore, but here's the number for you. And he gave me the number. I put it in my hand. Fucking TNT comes in, pull me out, put me up against the wall. They're like, open your hand. They thought I had like a bag.
Right.
And they look and they see that number and they're like, what are you going to do with that number? You going to call that number? And I'm like, no.
Of course not.
No, officer.
I'm filing it.
I pull out the badge and they're like, counselor, you shouldn't be hanging out in this bar, and you know what you're doing here, and they just let me go.
Wow.
But if I had called that guy and he had met me there and he'd given me the bag and then TNT had hit the door, I would not be I would not have a license today.
You'd be in deep shit.
And that was the kind of thing that scared me off the coke.
Yeah, I mean, the laws are very strict, but it's easy to forget that stuff. One of the comments he makes, like, he was buying tons of coke.
Oh, yeah.
And he only, like, sort of flippantly mentions that he thought of, that it's illegal.
Right.
And I just thought back to when I was never dealing with that much, but I rarely thought about, if I get caught, I will be in jail for this long. If I get caught with what I have in my pocket, I will have this consequence.
Yeah, you never think like that.
And even empty baggies of heroin under your seat or something. I used to have that shit all over my car.
Yeah.
And my dealer's like, you just leave that shit there? If you get pulled over, you're fucked. I'm like, oh, thanks, buddy. And
legal advice from the heroin dealer.
Yes, he was right, though. I cleaned it up. But, yeah.
Well, the other thing I like about the book is that he not only talks about his own story, which is pretty crazy. Like for example, he got when the Mavs were in the championship for the first time, he got tickets from Mark, and instead of like going to see the game with those tickets, like I guess he could see the game from Mark's box, but he also had the ability to purchase tickets for the playoffs, and he bought them and then traded them to his cocaine dealer for like giant bags of coke.
Yeah.
And then he took the coke.
This drove me insane. Reading this before you go on, this is like addiction horror for an addict like me.
So he gets this big bag of coke for 2 tickets to the playoffs. He takes it home. He's snorting a little of it. Then he decides he needs to hide it. So he breaks it up into 3 bags. He goes to
he gets
Home
paranoid.
Depot. Yeah.
He doesn't
goes
have
to
a
Home
reason.
Depot. He buys a bunch of like switch plates and like a bandsaw, and he cuts holes in his drywall and he installs the cocaine like behind a phony like electrical outlet.
He really goes out of his way. Yeah.
Then he's thinking about it and he's horrified, and he goes and collects all the coke and flushes it down the toilet.
This fucking idiot.
And then does the same thing again. 2 days later, he's like, why did I flush all that coke? I'm a moron.
So
he goes and he buys it, puts it behind the thing, takes it out of the thing, and flushes it down the toilet again. I'm like, there's a guy who's kind of reaching the end of his rope.
I never got that crazy. Like, that is a lot. That's fucking. And the dealer keeps showing up. He's like, I got more tickets for this guy. And so he's just hiding in his hotel room, being paranoid and flushing thousands of dollars of cocaine down the toilet. Yeah, that was bad. So he was having a rough go of it.
I mean, those stories are great, but then he also sort of interspaces those with stories about other people in the legal profession that he reached out to when he quit himself, and then he started working in recovery field, trying to help other attorneys or people in the legal profession, and he includes a lot of their stories in the book as well.
Yeah, Joseph Naus was whose book we had on the show, was also in those special groups. He was talking about those addicted lawyer support groups. So
right, so they exist, but there is a huge stigma in the legal profession because people who go into this line of work are typically your type A, aggressive, self-starter, grinders, people who will try and outwork everybody else, and it's also an extremely competitive field. So if people smell any blood in the water, like they know that you've got a problem.
They call them sharks for a reason.
I mean, they'll just, it's not reaching out and getting help. Most lawyers don't do it because they're afraid of the stigma in the profession. Right. Despite the fact that, everybody says, okay, lawyers have a terrible rate of drug and alcohol abuse. And you think, well, so did accountants, so does everybody else. Lawyers are 3 times more likely than the general population to have addiction. And this is self-reporting, and most lawyers probably underreport. So the figure is probably even higher, which is twice more than surgeons.
Jeez.
And, significantly higher than the general population. but they're the least likely to seek help of all the professions because of the stigma attached to it. So
yeah, even less than doctors, because at least doctors are, medical adjacent, like they're in that medical system. But
that's a plus and a minus because you also have access to opiates and stuff.
Yeah, but the lawyers, you can't be breaking the law. You're supposed to be this.
Well, believe it or not, and people can joke about this all they want, but rigorous honesty is one of the pillars of the legal profession. Like you are, you're laughing, but you have a code of ethics, and if you violate the code of ethics and the bar finds out about it, they'll just toss your ass right out.
Yeah, even if you do something unbecoming to the legal profession or something. I've heard of that. Yeah,
although that's really what'll get you thrown out is stealing clients' money, right?
Don't touch
taking money out of your escrow account, and people do that because when they get addicted to drugs, the first place they go is the client's escrow account because that's where the money is.
$1,000 sitting in this account. Why not? You're in control.
Those are the people that get disbarred and tend not to get their licenses back. So it would be better for the legal profession and for all professions to reduce the stigma around drug and alcohol use, to put mechanisms into place where you can reach out to an employee assistance program or a bar association program or something along those lines to get help before you're dipping into your client's escrow money.
Yeah. I mean, that's it could be wishful thinking. And I think how this works is when somebody well known in the legal profession has to come out as, a recovered addict or something, the whole paradigm has to change. And that's not easily done.
No. I mean, a lot of people don't want to be lawyers. And when they become lawyers, it causes them all kinds of internal mental problems and contradictions. And that leads to a lot of drug use and alcohol abuse, So he interviewed somebody who was on a law school admissions committee. And when someone approaches them to say that they have a drug or an alcohol problem after they've been at school a little while, her first question to them is, do you want to be a lawyer? And she waits for the answer. And if the answer is immediate, like, yes, I've always wanted to be a lawyer, then okay, that she takes them down one road towards getting help. But if they hesitate or they don't say right away that that's what they want, then she thinks there's something else going on, and they go down. Those are the people she suggests take a break, reevaluate, get some help, and then if they want to come back. So I think there's an awful lot of people out there who really don't want to be lawyers that just go to law school.
But you can do tons of stuff in business. Maybe what they don't know is with a JD, with a Juris Doctorate from law school, you can do plenty of business related stuff. You don't have to pass the bar and practice law.
See, everybody always says that, but
isn't that true?
Can you think of any jobs that might be true for?
Where you're not taking some kind of legal counsel position?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It would have to be human resources or something in an advisory capacity. Like Joseph Naus gets that. He's advising on but you're still doing legal work, but you're not practicing, right? That's the kind of jobs he gets before he passes the bar. But I guess you're still dealing with the law, so it's still something you don't really want to do.
I mean, you could go into insurance and kind of do what I do. I mean, I don't go to court and argue motions anymore. I don't practice law necessarily, but I use the skills that I learned in law school, negotiation, compromise, all that kind of stuff.
Just as an entrepreneur, it could be extremely advantageous if you just knew the law that way.
Yes. And one thing law school does teach you is how to think in a certain way, how to take logical steps from a set of facts and draw conclusions from them and then work off of that. And that's a good thing to have, I think, for anybody. But, when I was looking to get out of litigation, there was not a lot of alternative pathways that were clear to me.
Right. You have to be creative and, because a lot of it is just entrepreneurship or something where you just need a great idea or and that sort of thing. So,
it's a really interesting book, and, you get there's a lot of good stories in there. One thing I found really interesting about his life also was this whole orthorexia stuff, where he, I guess he called it exercise bulimia is what he had. So he would run 15 or 20 miles a day.
Yeah.
Every day.
We see that a lot in addiction recovery memoirs, these guys who rich roll.
I mean, he wouldn't call himself an ultramarathoner, but that's basically what he was, and that's all, a lot of that is tied up in shame about body image and
Right.
stuff. And it really is a manifestation of an eating disorder. And it kind of got me thinking, like, is that really the basis of my own running and exercising and stuff? But, I just don't have the capacity to run 20 miles a day or the time.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing great, right now with your 6 miles a day.
5.
5 miles? Yeah. I think you should up it to 6 starting tomorrow.
Sometimes I do too. Yeah. But he did that for years on end. I mean, it's definitely a compulsion at that point.
There's definitely compulsion to it, I think, because when I was doing the running during the pandemic, I did it as an escape, even though I was running 3 miles. And I got a little high off of it. So it could be a number of things.
You definitely get high.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You feel good. I used to say I felt like I just won the Super Bowl. I'd run 3 miles only around my block. I'd come home sweaty. I'm like, my family's watching TV. I'm like, they're just watching TV. Here I am sweating. I'm feeling good. I'm like, I'm getting exercise, so it's a very good feeling. I guess that could be addictive too. And it's healthy.
Yeah, you're addicted to the endorphins, and there's also other stuff going on inside your head. I mean, Cuban himself was saying that, there were periods in his life where all he would do would be like cocaine and drink and run 20 miles. Like, he just didn't want to be around other people. That's all he wanted to do. Right. So it was like an isolating thing also.
And I think that was also in the Finding Ultra. When Rich Roll said the same thing. Like, when he was getting into his ultra marathons, he was missing as much time doing that with his family than he did using.
Yeah.
Clearly it was healthier, but it was still, so if he's running away from responsibilities and intimacy with his family, that's not the best reason to, do ultra marathons.
Yeah. And what if something happens, you get injured and you can't keep going?
Yeah.
Then what?
Then what do? You start drinking again?
It's your coping mechanism, and all of a sudden it's taken away. That's tough.
So it's important to think about those things. Running is healthy and all of that, but it's always important to look at your motivations and why you're doing the things you're doing. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you get something out of a healthy activity that is distracting you from, the part X in your life, I would say keep doing it, within reason. But I like this book. I think this was a very, it was entertaining. He's a sort of pseudo celebrity, and the story is definitely, we can learn a lot from it.
Yeah.
And so I recommend it.
2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up from the Monkster community.
I mean, obviously, I found it a bit more compelling just by virtue of, the profession he's in and how, like, some of his thought processes seem like they mirrored my own.
Yeah.
I'm glad, he seems to have adjusted well. He still does some legal work, and he's more like involved in helping other people in the profession get help.
Yeah, it sounds like he's thrown himself into, helping people and making sure people can learn from, his experiences.
Yeah.
And it would be cool to get, maybe we could get him on the show. Have 2 lawyers. We'll have addicted lawyer roundtable. Joseph Naus, you, and Brian Cuban.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I'll drop him an email with a link to the show.
Let's do it.
See if he's interested.
Let's get him on.
Because I did notice on his webpage, it's like, have Brian come talk to your thing. And I'm like, well, that probably costs some money.
Oh, yeah.
So,
who knows what he wants? $10,000. And, okay, with that, I think we have a recovery in the news.
Yeah, we do. I'm going to put the sound, the jingle. Oh, shit. That was weird.
Why is my home phone ringing?
Right here.
Oh, wait, let me turn that.
Anyway, I'm going to put the recovery in the news jingle right here.
Yeah! Recovery in the news. Recovery in the news. Recovery. Recovery. There's no way.
On second thought, I'm not going to put it in.
That was terrible.
I'm just going to leave that as the thing.
Please don't. I don't know if I was in key. I couldn't remember the chord.
So there's
recovery in the news.
Recovery in the news. So there's been this story going around. I first saw it on NBC News, a video from NBC News that says that there's a unique program that offers hope for those with alcohol-related liver disease. So there's a new program that was recently launched for liver. Okay, so this is from the Inquirer.net. I don't think it's the National Enquirer. I think it's got more credibility than that. But so it provides, this new program provides individuals battling alcohol-related liver disease the chance to take control of their lives. Alcoholic liver disease, of course, is on the increase lately. It's claiming the lives of younger and younger people. People in their 20s and 30s now are developing cirrhosis and fatty liver and stuff.
That's not good.
A 2018 study has revealed that the problem is getting a lot worse. Deaths from alcoholic cirrhosis have been consistently rising since 2009. And with the sharpest increase reported among those aged 25 to 34. And while it doesn't say it in the article, I remember from reporting on this issue several months ago that the amount of women who are developing alcoholic liver disease, cirrhosis, is really going crazy because women's livers are smaller and they can, in theory, handle less alcohol. So if they're drinking more, it's more destructive to their liver than if a guy is doing it.
Wow.
And of course, you have the pandemic, which increased everyone's drinking and alcoholic liver disease.
Don't forget alcoholic, whipped cream is out there. Alcoholic ice cream.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, I love ice cream.
Ice cream.
I love alcohol. So that's...
It's in everything.
Men have a higher mortality rate than women from cirrhosis, but the annual rate for women grew faster at 37% compared to 29%. So it's a complex issue, multiple potential factors. You have the economic upheaval of the pandemic, and people are generally drinking more in society. Or I should say that less people are drinking more because overall alcohol consumption is down amongst younger groups of people, right?
It seems to be cooler now to be clean. It's like sober is the new black. You've got all of these celebrities. Who knows if they're really doing it, but at least it's being talked about. So that's interesting. So the people who are drinking more, but there are less, or something maybe like...
So there's a liver specialist named Dr. Jessica Mellinger, who is at the University of Michigan Medical School, and they've developed sort of a multifaceted approach to treating alcoholic liver disease, which seeks to tackle the underlying addiction issues, which you would think had already been done. But I guess liver specialists treat liver disease. They don't treat alcohol use disorder. Right? So...
you'd think they'd know something about it.
So they're reporting on this as if it's like this incredible scientific breakthrough.
We just discovered.
When really what it is their revolutionary liver disease treatment approach combines the expertise of both psychiatry and addiction specialists.
Wow.
Early results being highly encouraging. So, I mean, it sort of boggles the mind that this is the first time like anybody's taken these disciplines, put them together, and used them to treat liver disease.
Oh my God, yeah. It's like they don't talk to each other. These disciplines, there's no communication. It's like they don't read the articles. I'm kind of blown away. Like the positive results indicate that this approach might successfully prevent relapse in liver disease patients trying to recover from alcohol addiction. The multidisciplinary team is continually researching ways to help people with liver disease. They aim for patients to manage their conditions most effectively and reduce their risk of relapse. Am I nuts here by thinking this is just such a weird way of reporting that they're taking a multidisciplinary approach to curing liver disease? Yeah.
It's news?
Yeah. It's almost, could they be that like myopic? Like they're really just now like, oh, wow. Like this is news. Yeah. So thank God they're getting there eventually, maybe.
Because I guess the previous treatment, this fellow, Dr. Henry Kranzler, the Benjamin Rush Professor of Psychiatry at UPenn, this is what he believes, that simply informing patients that they have liver disease and require the immediate cessation of drinking is not sufficient.
No. They're just understanding this.
Yeah. There needs to be a real thoughtful and concerted plan, he continued. It's more motivating because it's more tangible than saying in a vague way that if you stop, things will get better. He also noted that the message to quit is more effective when the person sees scans of their liver.
Yeah.
Here's your fucked up liver.
Here it
quit
is.
Drinking.
Yeah, the fact that they weren't already like bringing in recovery options or understanding that people, if they are at that stage of liver disease, probably they're not going to be able to just stop drinking that easily.
Or maybe someone has already told them in the past that they need to stop.
You think?
It's just it's really strange to me. Or maybe this is just shitty reporting, and that people are just going off the NBC reporting, and there's more to this multiple disciplinary approach than just getting people to like an AA program or giving them medication.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know.
I don't know if you can really use a lot of medically assisted treatment if your liver's almost on the way out, though.
That's a good point. Like, what kind of options? I guess you could take the Vivitrol shot because it bypasses your liver.
Does it?
Well, it's a shot. The liver
doesn't everything go through the liver though? The blood all goes through the liver, right?
Yeah, but if you get this shot, somehow it's better for your liver because it doesn't get processed. Now, somebody, Monksters out there, correct me if I'm wrong.
Any hepatologists out?
No.
Not herpetologists. Those are snake people, right?
I think that if you inject it, somehow this is better. It doesn't go directly through your liver.
Words of wisdom.
Not a doctor. Just FYI, I am not a doctor.
Yeah, we don't know. And don't inject anything.
Please. And that's Recovery in the News. Bing. Yeah.
I'm a one-trick pony today.
Yeah. I'll just keep saying yeah. That about does it for today. I had a great time. Did you?
Yes, and it's improved my mood immeasurably from when I began.
You should have seen this guy when he came in this morning.
I was bad.
Heavens to Murgatroyd.
Yes.
Thank you so much for listening. Visit us at middleagesrecovery.com, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, and Twitter. So tweet us at twat, you twit, support your favorite show, drop a 5-star review, join our private Facebook group, buy a t-shirt, or simply write and say hello. We love meeting new Monksters and chopping it up on the Facebook group. But if you want a higher level of support and get with the Patreon crew, it's patreon.com/recovery in the Middle Ages. And we are hanging out on there, recovering together, and we look forward to meeting you. And finally, the best way to help the show is to share it with a friend. You know somebody who might like this show, tell them about it. You know somebody who would enjoy it, or maybe you want to give them a subtle hint that they need to stop drinking, send them a link to the show. And as we say, non proficiat perfectum.
That's progress, not perfection.
See you next time.
Stay fresh, you cheese bags.